All right. Tea. Ah, all righty. Here we are. I believe we are live. And we are about to we are about to show our full screen. All right, so we're live, everybody. Oh, just pause that. All right, Seamus, my friend, you can see my screen. Testing, 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 Seamus.
Yes, I'm good. Right.
Okay. Yeah, amazing. Okay, cool.
As my inspiration would say, great success.
um, all right, well, let's do it. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Um, we are, yes, we are live. We are live for another fabulous session of the one and only Brandstorm. My name is Carolina Jimenez, and my fabulous co-pilot here is the one and only Seamus Hart, the heart of Cara PR. So today we are going another layer into culture. So last week was about authenticity, and this week is a bigger and older um, is bigger and older than branding. So our promise for today, this isn't going to be a values page conversation. It's a history of human belonging and the conversation, how that's translated into brand strategy. So for established businesses, you already have a culture. And the opportunity is to make it visible, repeatable, and commercially useful.
Mhm.
Famous?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty good intro. I'm just like, yeah, there's not much more I can really add to it. Just that, culture is one of those things that, it's often really overlooked, especially from a business plan point of view. Um, Really, when you think about it, it's culture is that kind of bedrock that shows up when you're actually doing a lot of UX work. You're seeing the outcome of what your business culture is like.
yeah, absolutely. It comes through in the customer journey angle. Um, and a culture is not believed until people really experience it. And so um, essentially, this is all about talking and discussion about practical exercises that you can do inside your
Mm,
business to really fortify the culture. So before there were brand guidelines, there were campfires. And before content pillars, there were stories. Before logos, there were symbols. And culture walked so that branding could run.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's part of it that I don't think people understand about it. Its culture is that shared story, the mythology, if you will.
Absolutely. So, we will use the campfire metaphor for culture before branding. Story, or like, so when we think back to the caveman time, people would sit around the campfire, they would tell stories. The Aboriginal Dreamtime is a beautiful example of that. They had the Dreamtime stories, which had symbols, and they understood particular rituals, which they then repeated, and the insiders became closer and more ingrained in what their culture was, and the outsiders were formed. The people who were a part of that tribe knew that they belonged to these people, depending on where they lived and their rituals, and where they would roam, and the things that were specific to that particular tribe. So culture predates marketing, and that's how humans have organized identity for centuries. It's all about the meaning that they created for belonging.
Mm.
So, to make that commercial bridge, established businesses often have the product, they they have their offers and they have their audience, but they haven't made the culture legible. And so, what we mean by that is really just that, how do people know where they belong? Have I gone backwards one slide? Oh, I'm on slide 4 instead of slide 3. Hold on. Let me go back here.
Yeah,
There we
I
go.
think you jumped ahead. I was just a little bit.
Yeah, sorry. I was anyway. So yeah, how did people know that they belonged to a particular tribe or to a particular culture? Again, exploring the caveman days, exploring when, before the Australian settlers, we had the Aboriginal tribes and the Aboriginal people in Australia, and some of them would get in their canoes and go over to Asia, and they very clearly knew that they were from different tribes in the way that they dressed, their paint, the tools, the boats, the foods, all of these wonderful things, and the stories that they were able to tell from their lands and from their adventures. They had their own songs that they would sing, and their own dances and their own language, as well as their own understandings about what you did and didn't do. So, you know, when you're thinking about your brand, has your brand answered for its audience, for its people, how and who belongs in their world as a part of their tribe?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because one of the things I think it was Shano was talking about, like part of the thing that humans do in terms of communication, because it's biological, it's about a reward system. And one of the secondary levels when you're looking at communications models is that level of culture. Because if you're in the in group or you're understanding that, you're getting a lot more information than the surface level stuff. And it's why it's so important to build up a brand, because a lot of it is connecting those deeper level communication layers um, that are often missed. Best example, going to your favorite restaurant.
Not
No,
Harry Hard Hogs today.
not Harry Hartog's Day. No. But if you go to your favorite restaurant and think of it like this: you go to your favorite restaurant, you go there a few times. They know what you like. When you order them, they know what you like. And part of the secondary culture is that instead of asking for a wine, which is surface level, they may recommend stuff that you like.
Mm,
So they understand the culture and the significance of what you're doing.
yeah,
That's brand in a nutshell. Um,
yeah,
Really deeper connection and understanding that has helped us to survive.
yeah. And the cultural thing around that is, you know, like if I think about this cafe restaurant in Freshwater that
Mm.
I used to go to. Well, it was in Manly, and you could go there. You could take your dog as soon as you sat down. Someone had come over with a little bowl of water for your dog. Like it was a cafe that was essentially a dog cafe, and they would bring over a little snack and a little treat for you. They'd have little places to tie your dog and everything like that. And so many people that came over were like fresh out of the beach, and there'd be blankets and cushions and a place for you to like dip your feet in to get the sand off. And there was just such a warm culture that everybody knew. You could bring your dogs, and they'd have toys for the kids, and there was just already this sense of community that everyone knew everyone. And what the go was, you'd go straight to this particular section, people with dogs, and you'd pop your dog on like one of the little tie things underneath your table
Mm.
bench kind of thing. So it's all of these tiny little things that are like unspoken, like it's not even marketing, right? I don't believe that in their brand or on their website they say, oh, we're dog friendly and come and tie your dog
Mm.
up and wash your feet over there from being on the beach. But when you go there, it's already that vibe. It's already
It's
what people
already
know
they
you do.
already understand the underlying cultural
Yeah,
connection, and that's where a lot of brands really come undone, is that they don't understand the context, if you will.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So essentially, um, when we're talking about the evolution of culture, a campfire is not just content, it is a shared experience. It has a setting, it has a rhythm, it has a social rule and an expected behavior. And this is the evolution of man that we're talking about. And in the modern customer journey, it essentially works the same way, where people want to know how to enter, what to expect, and whether they belong. So the campfire was basically the original group chat, just with better lighting and fewer screenshots.
Mm. Ooh, very cool.
So culture is not a trend, it is how humans organize meaning. So, to give the strategic definition, culture is the original brand system because it creates that shared meaning. UNESCO defines culture broadly as a distinctive feature of a society or group, including lifestyles, ways of living together, value systems, traditions, and beliefs. And then Britannica includes language, ideas, beliefs, customs, codes, tools, rituals, and ceremonies. So when you translate that into a brand, culture is not your team lunch. It is the system of signals that teaches people what kind of brand they're dealing with. Now, the other day when Seamus and I were having a chin wag, as we do, because we love to
Mm.
have a chat, he was telling me about the culture inside one of his teams where they just used to make jokes that
Yeah.
if you weren't an insider, you would have been like, oh my God, this people are so rude. How can they? Someone needs to report them to HR or something.
Oh yeah,
But
that did happen. And the weird thing was that we were the one of the highest performing teams, and there was never any and also we had the lowest like internal complaints
yeah,
within the team. And the reason why it's a thing that Kim Scott calls radical candor. So when you've got a high performing culture, you have a thing called radical candor, which basically hijacks. It means that you're basically connecting at the highest level of communication, which means that you've got that high level of honesty and high level of understanding. And that's if you can get that in a team, it's extremely hard to do, because everyone has to be in that culture and has to be giving to it.
Yeah.
But it's something that businesses, they look at the theater of culture. They don't look at what culture really is, and that's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, from a commercial point of view, it's probably the reason why, they try to have all these team building things to really build that close connection and that culture. And, for some, yeah, it's, time to bludge and get out of the office and do something fun. But, are they really effective in terms of creating that culture? And again, that really comes down to who's leading that. So it's the same as in the tribe. You had your tribe leader, you had, and then you had the workers and the warriors and all of that, and everybody knew what their
Mm.
place was, and not one of them, if there was some kind of danger, they wouldn't be like, oh, no, I don't feel like it. They worked as a system. And I guess that's the important thing about culture. People know what will happen next. They know what the brand stands for, and they know what kind of behavior is normal. They know what's expected of them. And if the experience contradicts the culture, people believe the experience.
Mm. No, you're 100% right with that. It's really, it's like the authenticity of the experience that we're kind of getting to.
Absolutely. So, again, like I feel like we said this in our last one, the values page is not a personality transplant. Like,
Mm.
what do people learn to expect from your business before they have read the full website? You know, in UNESCO, the Universal Declaration on Cultural Diversity, you can look that up. It's got some really incredible and interesting insights that, just give you a little bit more of a deeper dive as to understanding culture and how that can work inside your business better. So, on to every strong culture has a recognizable anatomy. So, this is the anchor framework: code, rituals, language, symbols, taboos, stories, and roles. Same as in the tribe. Every person in that tribe had their role. They knew what was expected of them. They knew what their ritual was. They knew what they should and shouldn't do. And, from the elders being the ones who sat around the campfire and they told the stories. And they were sort of like the ones that were telling the stories to the little kids and doing that sort of caring and nurturing there, while the mums did the gathering and the dads did the hunting and the protecting. Um, this is essentially the point at which culture began to evolve. And so the point of great cultures is very specific and enough to be recognized without a logo. So,
Mm.
for example, surf culture, rock culture, luxury culture,
Mm.
coffee culture all have these elements. If you're a surfer and you generally understand surf culture, so that is, being a part of the dawn crew, going out, um, checking the high tide and low tide. So my ex was like a surfer, so he had dorsal, which would tell you about sharks that had been sighted. You were always checking like the currents and where the best surf is today. Like all the beaches have got like surf cams, so it shows you like the sets, like how fast they're coming in. Um, your surfboard is like the most important thing in the world. You probably won't spend, $60 on going out to dinner, but you will happily spend, you know 700, 1,500 on a surfboard because you're just so passionate about having like
Mm.
the best surfboard and getting the best wave and the longest ride and hang time and all this other stuff. Rock culture, you know I don't know, like, is it this symbol, rock culture?
I don't, yeah, it's the devil ones. Yeah, but it's really funny talking about surf culture. Like I worked with a weather company and a forecasting company years ago, and one of the things that's like a bit of an unwritten rule there, which goes back to taboos and kind of code. It's like part of it's the language, what they call things.
Yeah.
And then there's also the other things of like etiquette on waves when you're out there. So if you're really
Yes.
embedded into it,
Oh,
there's that. And
yeah.
there's also telling where certain surf spots are. They
Yep.
won't, if you're in the group, that they will share it. If you're not, they won't.
Yeah.
Also, certain brands have
Yeah.
very, very distinct cultural nuances, especially
Yeah.
when you're overseas, that they become this signifier. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, especially as well, like one of the interesting ones is like Hawaii. What type of board you have
Mm.
indicates what sort of a surfer you are.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's really interesting when you go down that kind of rabbit hole with those unwritten rules that
Yeah.
if you're in the clique, you know what it is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's especially the same with brands. So there's certain brands that have black cards. So if you have it, you get a very different level of service. And
Yes.
there's
Yes.
even some fast food chains that have brought that up where they're giving certain people because it's good for their business to see a certain celebrity purchase at their shop.
Yeah.
And they give them cards where they can eat free there and but they tend to post socially on it when they do it.
Yeah.
So it's like this
Yeah.
it's this code thing. So it's not just going to a place, and there's one in particular which I can't really talk about, but um, where they've given a bunch of celebrities these cards, and part of the culture who are really embedded in this fast food chain try and work out where these celebrities are.
Right.
And it's like if
Oh,
you're part of the group, you know it.
yeah.
Or KFC's a really good example of it, where they're doing all these collabs.
Yeah. Right.
Where one of them
Yeah.
I went to was there when they were redoing the spicy, they had a pop-up restaurant, and that was amazing. And it's like if you're in the know, you're in there. It's a massive ritual and cultural signifier.
Yeah.
Um, and with brands, it's like it's tearing out who those really vital customers are, the level of service, and they're the ones who are going to be advertising what you are. Even Apple does it.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And you know who's really like going all out? Meta with the
Yes,
glasses. Meta,
yes.
call my lawyer with the Kardashians on there.
Mm.
Um, one that I used to love was John West. John
Yep.
West, and this is a really important thing when we go to taboos. It's the things that John West rejects that makes John West the best,
Mm.
right? So for them, this is like their taboo. We're not going to take the we're not going to take the shitty fish. We're going to take only the best, right? And then if we flip back to the surf culture thing as well, and you were talking about like the taboo on there, like yeah, there's that culture where the first person to get on the wave gets the wave. Now, if you're an outsider, so seen this many times at Manly and at Bondi, I've lived in both places, went out there all the time, even myself as an outsider, but I think I got away with it because I was a girl. Like everybody goes to paddle for that wave, right? And then let's say someone at the front of the line gets on the wave, and then someone a little bit further back also gets on that wave and cuts in across. Oh my god!
Oh my
Like
God.
there is like a punch on out,
Second
out
World War
there.
Two.
It's just like, and even though I was forgiven, I went out with my foamy and my little wetsuit out at Manly, and so
Mm.
I paddled out. I got in so many people's ways because I was just so excited about catching a wave.
Mm.
I wasn't
You
really
don't
paying
know
attention.
about
I wasn't in the
the
in group.
ritual aspect to it.
But what was funny was because I was a girl and I was in my swimmers and looking a little bit cute at the time. I had people like laughing at me and kind of like cheering me on, which was really really nice because most surfer dudes like are just the loveliest people. They're
They are.
happy, they're doing their passion, they're out in nature, they're normally really fit and healthy. They have so much respect for the ocean and nature and all this stuff. And they're really in tune with like all the like global warming kind of
Mm.
stuff. But anyway, so I got in the way because I was kind of learning and just trying to get whatever I could. And then I got dumped so many times and I was having a rest on the shore. And this guy comes out of the surf and he goes, "Oh, is this like your first time surfing?" I'm like, "No, I've done it heaps of times." He's like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't be surfing here." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then he offered me like a surf lesson. I'm like, it's
Yeah,
pretty
it's
embarrassing.
funny, and it's like some of the language they come out with was awesome. Some of them I needed a bit of a decode when
Right.
I worked
Like,
with a few of them. Yeah, sharky
gnarly dude.
conditions. My favorite
Oh,
was we had this one guy who would come in and he'd be like, "Oh, it was sharky conditions, damn groms everywhere."
yes.
Um, yeah, tearing up. Get what it was.
Tearing up the
Yeah, it was
barrels.
pumping. There goes pumping. Although it was sharking conditions, although there were groms out there, so that they'll be the first shark bait. I'm like, okay,
Ah, like a couple of lefties coming in and got a
yeah.
little, yeah,
Oh no,
it's
they were
so
well, they
hilarious.
were fun to work with.
Yeah. And it's even the same for like Aussie, like real Aussie culture and like Aussie battlers. Um, like Americans when they come to Australia and go to like a really Aussie, like almost bogan beach town or whatever, they're
Mm,
just like they have to really concentrate and like try and the same as you like decode what the hell people are talking about because they're just talking in this lingo which is our Aussie sort of beachside surf culture.
mm,
And it's beautiful, right? But people already understand that, like the same way that I'm understanding about like these surfers and what they're like and their
mm.
personalities. Like this is what we're trying to breed into our businesses, making sure that it's got that same level of gravitas that people understand already, you know all of these elements, all of the codes, all of the rituals, the language, those symbols that people are looking out for, what the taboos are, and the roles that they can play inside of your brand culture.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. It's interesting when you go down that rabbit hole.
I know, and we do this so much. So, all right. So essentially, a culture is a vibe with rules. If there are no rules, it's just ambience with a Canva account.
Hmm.
So now let's put that anatomy on a timeline and look at how culture has evolved. Oh, right. There we go. So to my next page. So if we walk through the audience, sorry, if we walk through quickly the timeline, essentially at the beginning of time, um, campfires gave us the story. Our tribes gave us the code. Our guild gave us the standards. The salon gave us the taste, and so on. Mass media gave us shared references, and subcultures gave us refusal and digital microcultures, which then gave us participation. So the commercial point is that brand culture is not new. It's a modern expression of old human belonging systems.
No, it's Yeah, you're right. And it's like when you think about it, it really kind of sums up the whole service design model. It really shows that experience layer where people get together, learn, share, work out what tools work. It's kind of like now if you look at a signifier is if you're at a board level, it's like it's all about AI, which is the new signifier. However, a lot of them don't look at it at deep culture level, what it actually does to a business. And if you want to learn from my fail, read what's going on with WiseTech. That is, it's what you'd call surface level AI, and they're not looking how it's actually destroyed their culture. The fact that the managing director's gone into hiding should be a really good indication of um, its top level tool. It's not integrated culture, which is a completely different thing.
Yeah, 100%. So just take a moment to ask yourself, which one of these does your brand currently rely on most? Is it the story? Is it the code, standards, taste, the memory, or the refusal, or even potentially participation? So if you're a surfer and you're in that surf culture, you essentially are like to refusing to drawing a blank. Let's go with rock culture. Rock culture is like it's pushing for that creativity and it's
Hmm.
refusing to what do you call it, to submit to the norms of not
Yeah,
being,
the
out
punk
there
culture.
and
It's
grunge
it
and
yeah, it's about like tossing societal norms.
yes, amazing. Oh,
Yeah. Ooh.
that's my reminder. Thank you, reminder.
Yeah,
So
I've got a
let's zoom
reminder.
into the first half of that timeline: story, code, and standards. Let's roll, people. So when we talk about the campfire, people gathered around a story. And for brands, the story cannot sound like a late stage marketing exercise. It has to explain the tension, the belief or insight that started the business. Tribe, culture creates a code. So people want to know how things work here, what is respected and what is not acceptable. Just like in the surf, if you cut in on someone, expect that somebody's potentially going to want to punch on with you. Um, and then the guild. The standard builds reputation. So this is the most valuable part for being for established businesses. Many have got the high standards, but the market cannot see clearly enough. They can't see them clearly enough. So it's all fine and well to say, you know, we are a swimming brand and we're eco-conscious. Um, but, how are people really seeing the standards as to that really prove that you are eco-conscious? How are you not just another standard swimwear company that has just been made in China, arrives in Australia, wrapped in tons of plastic, you know, everything is like wrapped and over processed and over manufactured. The materials aren't, eco friendly and so on and so forth. Like there's like it's one thing to say, but you need to be able to obviously back it up, that you are fulfilling these standards, because anywhere where you can't back up what you say, whenever you get caught out, you are taking away that trust. And every time you break away from that standard, you're taking away that trust again. So really the primary takeaway is that the the reputation is culture repeated long enough for people to see it and believe it.
No, you're right. Sorry, it just Did that pausey thing. Yeah, it's when you think about it, a lot of it is around like your service cadence. And you're also looking at the code of standards. So like if a if you think about it like this, culture is that shortcut. It's that cognitive shortcut to making what you're doing a lot more understandable. So like when I go into certain businesses, if I go into Macca's, I know what that's about. If I go into Mecca, I know what that's about. It's just that cognitive shortcut to make connect your idea to what a customer wants.
Yeah, absolutely. So if your brand story sounds like it's written after the logo, people can generally tell that because
Hmm.
premium is not decoration, premium is standards with witnesses.
Mm.
So, what would be one invisible standard in your business that the market should understand better? Key question for anybody who is watching this live. What is that one invisible standard inside your business that the market should understand better? So, next, we're going to talk about um, culture became about taste and sharing references and the power of saying no. Again, going back to the John West reference, the things that makes John West the best is what the things that it says no to, the things that it rejects, right? So this again is about standards. Um, Salons and clubs teach us that culture is all about taste. So when you go to an RSL, that is a club that will basically say, this is like what is it, retired servicemen and women's league, something to that effect. You have to wear clothes and shoes. You must wear pants. You can't just rock up in your swimmers and thongs. You can't wear hats. They have all of these sort of like codes in there, right? And so salons and clubs have been teaching us about that for a significant period of time now. And this matters for premium brands because it's not about being louder, it's about having clearer taste and restraint. So if I was to go over to Double Bay right now and I was going to sit in one of those cocktail bars or in one of their like fine dining restaurants, if I turned up in a crop top looking like hadn't done my hair and I stank and I was half dressed, let's say I was just wearing a bikini or you know sweaty muddy workout clothes, I can pretty much guarantee you they would ask me to leave. um which I actually saw it, like, I know I'm digressing here, I saw the most hilarious post today, um and I took a screenshot of it, and it was fears rise. Where's this screenshot? Fears rise in Double Bay as, where is it? Here we go. So, housing crisis deepens in Sydney's east as experts warn of critical shortage of homes with helipads. Some buyers are being forced to choose between direct harbour access and a helipad. I mean, whoa,
Mm.
devastation. So, anywho, mass culture teaches repetition. Shared references make people remember. If everything changes every campaign, nothing in your messaging, in your story, in your journey is compounding. And subculture is what teaches us refusal. So, surf, punk, skate, hip hop, goth, rave, and even streetwear all become recognizable because they were clear about what they were not. You're not going to see a surfer, um, you know, generally speaking, you're not going to see a surfer, at a chlorine pool, swimming there and hanging out by the pool there. Like, it is so unlikely. You're going to see that surfer getting up at crack of dawn to go out and check the waves. And if he
Oh,
can't
they don't
find one,
check the waves. They go they go.
Yeah, they'll go even. Well, from speaking from my cousin, he would basically go and check. Like he'd go and stand up on the thing. He'd always have his surfboard in his car, and his wetsuit, and he'd go and have a look. And if that was spot was no good, then he'd go to the next beach and then to the next beach. And you can always guarantee that surfers are going to surf. Punks, I don't know too much about punks, but generally speaking, they're going to look like, they've got the chains, they've got the belts, they're wearing eyeshadow, and like it's just like a full demonstration in the way that they dress every single time. Your skaters, they're going to be wearing the loose pants. You're not going to see them in tight active wear. I mean, unless it's a chick, but they're going to be in that loose baggy clothing with the skate shoes and probably a cap. It's highly unlikely that they're going to be dressed preppy with a manicure, pedicure, and beautifully polished
Hmm.
skin. Like it's just that's they're teaching people what they're about by the things that they are and are not doing, and they're very, very clear on that.
Yeah, it goes a little bit further than like the eye surface level of stereotypes. When you think about it, it's really what the brand is there to do. It removes a lot of the clutter and it makes it very understandable. So from a service perspective, your expectations are largely being met as you turn up. Yeah, it's really, gauging what the user wants opposed to and what you're actually providing.
Absolutely. And so essentially, subculture is what happens when people agree the mainstream is not their norm. You cannot mood board your way into a movement. So, what does your brand have taste about? What do you think your market gets wrong? Um, it's in answering those questions and knowing what it is that you're not and that you don't do, that you can get clearer on what you are and what you do, which sounds weird, but in
Mm.
when you go through the whole sort of branding exercise and the UX design and the experience and brand building, we go through this list of, okay, one of the clients, for example, was a coaching business, but she was a coach, but she wasn't. She was, what did she want to call herself? She called herself, and we went through the thing, and she's like, okay, I'm not a medical therapist. I am not a counselor. I am not I'm not just a DIY type of service. So her name was, oh my God, I'm just having so many blanks today. The
Oh,
life
no, that's okay.
curator. The life
Yeah.
curator. So she had all of these different methodologies that would basically help a woman who was going through that sort of midlife crisis to look at what was happening in her life and then really understand that, and then from that point curate where they wanted to be. And it was a combination of using NLP, so neuro linguistic programming, it was workshopping, it was all of these things. But the one thing that she wanted people to know was that she was not a coach. She was not a life coach. She was a life curator.
Mm.
Right. So the difference in that being that she didn't want to just, have calls with people every day and, talk about, what terrible things happened and, okay, great. Well, maybe you can do this or maybe you can do that. And then let's speak again next week. No, she wanted to hear what was happening and then go into looking at what modality would work in that time and space to look at why it was happening and then curate what it was that they wanted to be the outcome
Mm.
from that point in time onwards, which is a really fabulous example in my point of view, but it's just my humble point of view.
Mm. Yeah, I think probably on to the next
Yes, absolutely. So that brings us
Right.
then to generations, not as stereotypes, but as cultural environments.
Yeah, it's really funny because it's like it's one of the things that I've studied in a lot of detail, and it's like each generation does have its like cultural and timeline, um what would you call it, archetype,
Mm-hmm.
especially around identity and what they're doing. Yeah, it's kind of really interesting when you look at it. Part of it, it's around, understanding those generational factors and how they actually fit in with the kind of the um who you're actually accessing. Because there's
Yeah,
things that like I remember growing up, like Kmart used to be a daggy brand.
yeah,
Now it's actually really cool.
yeah, yeah.
It's
They've
it's
got great stuff.
interesting how that stuff shifts. And it's all the other one as well. LA Gear. I remember in the 90s, like early 90s, it was up there with Reebok and Nike.
Yeah,
Like in a lot of the times, if you had LA Gear, that was really cool. And then they sunk their whole brand, and then at the moment, it's like people don't know what it is, and it's not that long ago, like 20 years. Um, yeah, it's just interesting how that generational shift happens very quickly.
very much so. So this is not boomers this Gen Z is that type of segment. This point is that each generation grew up inside different cultural technologies and trust conditions. So, for example, boomers had mass media and counterculture. Gen X had scenes, irony, and anti corporate suspicion. Millennials had identity, experience, purpose, and the early social internet. Whereas Gen Z has the remix, receipts, and microcultures. And the most recent generation, which is Gen Alpha, is growing up with game worlds, avatars, and participation. So for brands, the point is not to chase every generation, it's to understand what the market has been trained to expect and then apply that inside your business and the way that you communicate so that they understand where they belong.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I was just trying to make sure that we're pacing it out, but no, it's really around finding that belonging, and it's really understanding like the cultural expectation that kind of shapes it for who your customer is within that kind of service design model.
Absolutely. So Gen Z did not kill brand loyalty. They just asked brands to stop being weird about it. Whereas
Yep.
millennials turned culture, um, millennial culture turned the purchase into a personality trait. So
Mm.
sometimes beautifully and sometimes exhaustingly.
Mm. No,
So that
absolutely.
that really prompts us to look into our business and ask ourselves what generation or cultural environment has shaped your expectations as a buyer, and then apply that to your business and what you're providing in terms of the environment and the expectation.
Yep.
So this now takes us to a quick little discussion around surf culture. So, surf culture, which, as we know, is a brilliant example because nobody needs a values page to recognize it. It's got the ritual, the language, territory symbols, etiquette, and a relationship with nature. What surf culture makes normal is patience, respect, freedom, unless you're in the lineup and somebody cuts you off, local knowledge, environmental awareness, and earned belonging. So, surf riders show the activism side of surf adjacent culture. They protect the oceans, waves, beaches through powerful activists' work. I've led many sessions at the Surfrider Centre in Manly, and we clean up the beach. We take out the microplastics out of the sand. We take out all of the cigarettes. We create presentations about um, how much microplastics is getting into the ocean and small things that people can do on a daily basis, whether it's teaching your kids about rubbish at the beach and just collecting 5 items every time you go to the beach. Um, and that's just a microculture about surf culture, that they have that relationship with the ocean because they're in it every single day.
No, you're right about that, and it's in I mean in UX terms, you've just got to look at do people understand the kind of the world you're building? Think of it like Minecraft is that people you build a world, do they know how to enter it? Do they know what it's about? Really simple question.
Absolutely. Surf culture didn't become iconic because someone drew a wave. It became iconic because people knew the code. So, what's your equivalent to Dawn Patrol? What ritual proves the culture before the brand explains itself?
Hmm. And on to the
Which
next.
brings us to rock culture. So, if we look at rock culture real quick, oh, there we go. Rock culture is instantly recognizable, but it's not the only jacket. It's not only the jacket or the boots, it's the attitude. It's that badass attitude. If we look at, who's that guy? Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne.
Ozzy
Like,
Osbourne. Yeah, Ozzy
Oz,
Osbourne.
fucking Aussie. He's you like you can just see that that dude is a badass guy. You can see that he has taken more drugs than any human being ever to have existed. He's just and like the long greasy hair, his eyeshadow, like all of it, you know. And it says we don't need permission. We do not need to be polished to be powerful. We gather around expression and identity. Um, Dr. Martens is a useful brand example because its own history describes the boot becoming intertwined
Mm.
with music tribes and subcultures rather than remaining simply a workwear boot.
Yeah, I mean it's like that with all of them. It's really making, connecting that feeling to what they're doing before even reading a word. And it's not about copying. See, but it's really funny. It's like some bands can do it like satire wise,
Mm,
others can't. It just comes across as a bit of a joke.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Rock culture didn't ask, oh, is this on brand? It made an attitude so clear that everything became on brand.
mm,
So what attitude should people feel from your brand before they read the copy? Are you the explorer, the discoverer? Are you the sage? Are you the wizard? Are you the nurturer? Are you the person who is saving the world, or are you forging new paths and bringing people together, or are you one of these like intensely academic, like um, building technology type of cultures? Like it's up to you and what it is that you're creating. But where we come in is helping you to make that much more visible and understandable in cues that are not necessarily the copy on your website, but the way that your brand behaves in its culture. All
no,
right.
you're right about that. Probably, yeah. Ooh, next.
So now that brings us um, through to some of our favorite four fast examples, focusing on the mechanism rather than that admiration. So we've got Lego. The customer is not just the buyer, they are the builder. Lego's values include imagination, creativity, fun, learning, caring, and quality. And that's very easy to understand with Lego. No matter where you are, you can always see and understand that as a part of their culture. Harley Davidson, HOG, shows the product becomes a passport into the rider's world, benefits, mileage, events, chapters, and community. Then we've got Patagonia. Culture becomes powerful when the business model proves the message. Its ownership structure protects purpose and directs excess profits toward environmental work. This is so important because they are walking their talk. You can see the work that they do and they make it very clearly visible. Netflix is another really good example. Culture is epic, explicit, enough to attract and repel. Its memo names high performance, candor, freedom, responsibility, and principles like the dream team and people over process.
It's no, it's interesting because it's really about translation and that level of loyalty. So if you're thinking about it, it compresses down that decision-making process, and like businesses, and this is any size, can use that same logic. They don't need that global scale. A lot of it's just making what you do really, really logically, because I mean, those brands all, when they come to mind, you've got a very distinct feeling about it.
Absolutely. So essentially, do not copy the logo, copy the discipline underneath the logo. So ask yourself, what does your customer become when they choose you? And I think this is a really beautiful question to ask, because when we're talking about them feeling like they belong and them knowing if they belong, um, we're we have to first invite them on that journey that makes them feel like they belong. And Nike does this amazingly well. You know, you see their advertisement, you've got just a normal person who's putting on their sneakers, but when they put on those Nike sneakers, they suddenly feel and become this hero. And just like a Serena Williams, potentially, who's playing tennis, or just like one of these famous football players, um, they can feel that sense of power and strength and promise of becoming an athlete by wearing these sneakers. And this is what we want to create for you. Which brings us to the culture build kit. And I'm going to pause for just 1 second because my heater has stopped working and I'm starting to shiver. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I guess it's funny when you're looking at the Ultra brand kits. I've got to wait for the partner to get back.
Oh my God, it is so cold here.
Hmm.
It's, let's see, what temperature is it right now? Not that it matters, but just so that I can have, oh, only 10 degrees. um, so this is now the practical hinge of the session. Established businesses often already have the culture and the founder standards, the client compliments, the service rituals, the things that they refuse. The issue is that some of those signals are not always visible, repeatable, or commercially useful. Um, so if we now introduce the 5 moves: excavate, codify, ritualize, translate, and prove. Um, I have had, I feel like lawyers is a good example of this, right? So there are lawyers who do only certain types of work, right? They're all lawyers, but I feel like they're the first to say, "Oh, I only do family law," or "I
Mm.
only do, IP law." They've got in there. They've typically got inside their sort of ritual first understanding what the issue is, and then working out whether or not it's inside their remit. But Seamus has probably got way more examples because
Oh,
this is what you
it's
do all the time.
no, it's, I mean, part of it is like the lawyer example is a really good one, is that you've got an idea of what an overreaching archetype is. Um, but a lot of it is translate when you think about it, it's actually translating that knowledge, in which I'm doing a project at the moment on service design, is that people have this idea on their head and they think it's really easily communicatable. And it's actually translating those ideas and how that actually shows up in your digital experience, in your onboarding service, in your service model. It's not always that that easy. And my big advice is it's incredibly complex and hard to make something very simple.
Yeah, that's true. That is really, really true, actually.
Mm,
Um, yeah, your culture is already in the room. It just may not have the name tag on it yet, but that's something that we can deep dive into and help you to get clarity
mm,
on. It's not something to stress about. It's just something to be aware that needs to happen. So that's why we're here. So that now brings us to the most important thing to remember is don't start with what values should we write. Start with evidence. What are customers already experiencing? Start with your compliment audit. Look at the last 10 testimonials. Look at the DMs, look at the reviews, referrals, or even the thank you messages, because that is where you can understand what people are repeatedly praising. Um, are they praising calmly? Are they praising that there's clarity in the business, discretion, honesty, speed, warmth, precision? What is it that they're saying you do really, really well? And then, not the funnest bit, but auditing your complaint, doing a complaint audit. So essentially looking at delays, looking at confusions, refunds, messy handovers, ghosted proposal. Um, where did the experience contradict the brand that you want to be? And, none of us are perfect. We've all got room to grow. Like, it is something that you can't fix it if you don't find it first. So, it's something that's really important. Don't skip over it, is the point there. But the last bit to look at is the founder friction. So where does the founder keep correcting or rescuing? Because that is often the standard that has not been translated. So, for example, I remember one time when I was doing property management. I we had people who were living in an apartment and they had a serious mold issue. I had to obviously speak to the tenant, and then I had to speak to the owner and come up with like a solution. The problem was the owner didn't really want to have to spend the money on it, and in some cases just denied that there was even an issue. And also the tenant was getting sick. It was ruining their things, and and I basically then had to kind of like work out, well, shit, what does our business do? What does our real estate agency do in this type of situation where there's that clash? So I then essentially had to look at what service we could send and what the rules and regulations were, because I wasn't the owner and he hadn't briefed me on, right, well, it's really important that we look after our tenants because they pay the rent, but also we've got to negotiate with the owner, and give him his sort of responsibilities, but be on side with him. So that's the best example that I can give you in terms of, he had to do that rescuing because I didn't know like how to sort of deal with that. Like, what's the culture that we, just go and fix that and then build the owner later, or was it just basically tell the tenant, pull your head in and sorry, can't do anything about it, get a dehumidifier. Um, but yeah, Seamus, you've probably got way better examples than that.
Oh no, it's probably the similar to you. I mean, it's really it's kind of interesting. The way that you're kind of looking at it is really the friction points. Part of it is if you're looking at the data, um, a lot of them don't know where to start. So if you think about it, like a job as a UX person is understanding what is what you call posteriori or a priori information. Like a good plan uses both. So it uses the data and it also uses a hypothesis that you can test. A lot of businesses I've worked with, they start with this great idea, they run down it and they don't have the data to run it up. Or the other thing they do is they only look at the data and then they run into the corner of yeah, it's like they're just following, like it's very reactionary, so they don't actually understand the underlying behaviors. So they're missing 50% of the problem. It's really the vibes. Vibes from this point of view don't get where you need it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately, the vibe has receipts, and sometimes the receipts are refund emails, complaints, additional questions as to why something happened in a particular way when the website says that, you do it this way. So, what do people compliment you for, and what have you not turned into brand language yet? Because once we have the clues, we can write the code.
Mhm.
Brings
Yeah.
us to write the code.
Mm.
So um, this is the most practical exercise for anybody who's watching, and also for your audience. Instead of writing values, write around here statements. Around here, we love having dogs in our cafe, and we have little places to tie them onto. Just wave to one of our friendly staff, and we'll bring you over some snacks and a water bowl. Um, so around here, we explain the strategy before the recommendation. Around here, we do not make the client chase. Around here, we protect the standard when things get busy. Then
Yeah.
write, that's not us list. What would feel false if it only made money? What would cheapen the experience, and what trend would dilute the brand?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the way that I always look at it is those boundary statements, because you can always tie them into value, not value. I'm not talking about tangible value, but the intangible stuff. So really look at how those scripts are built up and understand those boundaries of what you can and can't do, because those are the things that is going to be interpreted by your customer. So making very tight boundaries and very specific statements, that's going to be explainable to your customer, which it means that you're not going to have a whole heap of problems. And one of the key things that I've noticed on a lot of websites and a lot of print is broad brush text or AI text that covers everything, including the kitchen sink. It opens up a liability thing and it blurs the boundaries of what you can and can't do, which creates a huge problem for you. So being specific, especially in brand context, is going to help you out more than anyone else. And it will also help your customers because, think of it like a builder. If I say I can do everything and yet I don't have a plumber there, I can't do that. Or if I'm a plumber and I'm saying I can do everything else, they're going to get confused when you can't do the electrical work.
Amen. Yeah. So if your value cannot become an around here behavior, it's probably just decoration. Because a culture with no taboos becomes whatever the market rewards this week. So,
Mm.
quick exercise to do is the around here statements, and it is normal to something at something. So as we sort of gave some examples before, like for that cafe around here, little furry people are welcome. In our other business, Neuro Awesome, one of our around here statements would be around here, you are welcome to come as you are. You are welcome to break, have a break, pause, flap, stim, do whatever you need to, step out, and just be whoever you are. You don't need to mask here when you come to any of our low pressure social events. Yes, that was a shameless plug for Neuro Awesome and Neuro Hangs, which is happening this Sunday. Dungeons and Dragons, people, don't forget.
Mm.
Alrighty, so we are powering through, and we've really only got one more slide after this.
Yep.
Because as usual, Seamus and I love to have a chat, and we always just end up going for a lot longer than we anticipated. But anyway, that's fine. So culture is not solid until it becomes a part of the customer's experience. If we say we value clarity and the website then needs to not be confusing. If we say we are premium, then the inquiry process cannot feel rushed. If we say that we value care, then our onboarding cannot feel cold. I mean, I recently had an experience with a childcare outside of school organization who uh, claim all these wonderful things about, you know, looking after kids and all this stuff, like how much they care. And also, I experienced the rudest comment about, oh, you're so late. And I was just like, wow, that is so much sass. Clearly, I didn't want to be late. And if you care, you would understand, like, I'm just a solo parent doing it on my own. Like, I haven't got other people to help me out with this kind of stuff. Um, and I remember when I called to say that I was going to be running late because I was driving back from Sydney, the person on the phone was like, oh, well, this is just unacceptable. Like, surely you've got someone else that can come and pick up your child. And I said, no, there's no one else. It's literally her and I. So you can see there, from an organization that's claiming that they care, they're fully family centric and so on. The experience really broke that trust that was supposedly a part of their culture. It completely contradicted what they pertain themselves to be. So in the first, so something that you can use in your business, the first 48 hours as a fast win. After someone inquires, books, buys, or signs, what do they receive? What do they understand and what do they feel? For the next 24 hours, document what happens in that process. Even if you were to get some of your close friends to go through that process with you and report back on what it is that they felt, or what it is that they sort of experienced, or what were they expecting, did it meet their expectations, that's going to help you to get a lot clearer in terms of what that culture and that friction, etc., is inside your business and your brand and your culture that you may or may not have known already existed.
Yeah, no, you're right about that, and it really goes down to the service design and user experience lane. It's map out the stuff, and this is part of the reason why you do need service design. It's always seen as like this airy fairy thing. Um, Map all the details out because I can guarantee when you map it out, you'll see some glaringly obvious problems.
And
Um,
holes as well.
in holes in it. I mean, the best example of it is if you want to put this to an example, ask your partner or a friend to write how to make a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and
Yes.
follow those instructions to the letter. And you'll note, and what you'll find is that there's a bunch of implied things that you have in there that they don't list out, and that's where service design makes the difference because what you're doing is you're putting in all those details and you're realizing where those glaringly big holes are. For instance, did that exercise once, and part of the detail that they didn't do on the make a cup of tea was actually boil the water
Well, that's
because
clever.
it's all implied.
Yeah.
Like, how hard is it? You get a cup, you put a tea bag in, you pour water in it. Okay, so I did that and I got a shit cup of tea. Yeah,
That's annoying.
that's
Um,
funny though.
so essentially, the customer believes the experience more than the values page. That is just a given. So where does your customer journey currently contradict the culture that you want to be known for? It's just a really important value add to your business once you can understand where that leak is, where that contradiction is. You're already starting to, you know, you're already able to start to do something about it. So let's turn this discussion over now to a couple of quick questions. Oh, we don't super have time for questions. Um, we pretty much need to wrap. So as usual, we have gone super over time.
Yeah, and I've got a
But
hard stop at 1:30.
yes, yes. So basically, here are some questions for anyone who's watching to quickly take note of, take a photo, take a screenshot, write it down and email it to us if you need further clarity or you need some help on restructuring, improving, fine tuning. We would be happy to give you a quick 30-minute to 45-minute free session to help you get on your way. But essentially, the 6 questions you should be asking yourself and your team: what is your campfire story? What would feel false even if it made money? For us in You're Awesome, we're all about having safe spaces. So for us, if somebody came into our group who was neuro and started creating chaos and upsetting the other participants, that would feel false. That wouldn't be safe for the other participants. So we wouldn't have it as a part of our brand, as a part of our culture, as a part of our events. What ritual could you introduce this week? And this is an important one because again, it's the rituals, the signals, the codes that you create that give people that understanding of we belong here. This is where we belong. And knowing that they should continue to dive into that space and feeling safe, feeling understood, feeling their worth, and that sense of arrival. And then the last three, as you can see here, is what is your surf code or the equivalent? What role does your customer play in the story of stepping into that world where saving the world is the focus, or welcoming more neurodivergent people is the focus, or perhaps you're creating a type of app that is for people with disabilities and it's all about empowering and supporting people with disabilities. What role does your customer play in that world? And then the last one is, where is the culture trapped inside the founder? So if you're the founder or you're working for the founder and you're watching this, what are the things that you know that they do and that are their standards and that are their way of operating that has not been documented that you have to pass on to the other people? Like, for example, working as an EA, we've like often getting briefed. And then, when I have to book travel or perhaps organize different rooms, I knew the specifics about each executive. This executive likes to fly at this time of day only because then he needs X amount of time to do this and do that because he's really, he's really, invested in arriving early, talking to the sales teams personally one-on-one and building that rapport before he starts his sales workshops. So there's all of these little sort of culture things that are ingrained in there that someone who is like a very personal contact would know and understand, but nowhere in his, I suppose, systems is that sort of documented. So if, for example, he couldn't be there for that presentation on that day, no one would know. If I didn't tell, whoever was facilitating the speaking instead of him, no one would know. So these are things that are in the brain of the founder, the leaders, that are a thing, but nobody has documented it to make sure that there's a cadence around it, that it happens every time, not just when that person is the one doing it, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, James?
Yeah,
Yeah?
that makes sense. Yeah, it's just it's really about the journey and the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and what we can make visible this week. So do not tell me your culture, show me the receipts. Ask people to choose, one of these questions out of your, organization group and get them to sort of workshop it individually and then come together and test your answers. To see where you've got different perceptions of what it should be, which I think is something that you're going through at the moment, Shavers, with your service design. 20 different versions of how to make a cup of tea or something or other, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
So basically that brings us to the end of our presentation today. We are, super excited to be able to offer these sessions. And, today it was all about the fact that culture is older than branding, but it's also one of the most commercially useful things an established business can clarify. So it's not something to skimp over. Your culture already exists in the story, the standards, the rituals, the language, and the taboos, as well as the customer journey. So now is the opportunity to make it visible enough to build trust and momentum. So if the brand no longer reflects the caliber of the business, the first step is the diagnosis, and that's what we are here for. So feel free to reach out to us, book in a CPR discovery call, drop us a line, comment on the post. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're all over the shop. So you can reach us very simply and we can help you with that.
Okay, no, thanks. I think you've pretty much covered everything. It's just, yeah, part of it, it's, get someone to look at the journey for you. That's going to make the biggest difference. It's going to, uncover some of those pain points and those gaps within your service model or things that you've never thought about that work really well.
Absolutely, because a strong culture is not a mood board, it's a set of standards with witnesses. So that's all for us for today. wishing everyone an amazing long weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to drop a comment and reach out to us if we can offer any support and assistance. But other than that, stay well, have an amazing Friday, and peace out. Thank you,
Sure.
Seamus, for your
Thanks.
amazing
Thanks,
work.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.